All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to break down a framework called GRIP. It stands for Government Restrictions Inhibiting Prosperity, and it's all built around one big question. What if the system itself is making it tougher than it needs to be to build wealth? Let's explore that. I mean, have you ever felt that? You work hard, you try to save, you make smart investments, but it still feels like you're fighting against some kind of invisible current, just constantly swimming upstream. Well, the analysis we're digging into today offers up a pretty interesting framework for understanding that exact feeling. It's called GRIP, and it's basically a lens for looking at specific government policies that, according to this analysis, can really slow down or even stop people from getting ahead financially. So here's the game plan. First, we'll get a handle on what GRIP actually is, its core pillars. Then, we'll dive deep into three of the biggest ones: the long-term effect of taxes, the maze of regulations, and this concept the source calls the dependency trap. And to wrap it all up, we'll look at some of the strategies suggested for actually navigating this system. All right, so let's get right into it. What exactly is this GRIP framework? Let's take a look at the four big ideas that hold the whole thing up. So the whole GRIP argument really rests on these four big pillars. First, you've got restrictive tax policies. The way the government takes a slice of your money at almost every turn. Second are regulatory barriers, which are basically rules that can limit where and how much you can save and invest. The third is dependency-driven social programs, which the source argues can, surprisingly, make it harder for people to want to earn more. And finally, restricted financial tools, where some of the best investment opportunities are, well, off limits to most people. That's the foundation we're going to build on. Okay, let's tackle that first pillar, what the analysis calls the lifetime tax drag. This is all about looking at how taxes don't just affect you today, but how they add up over years and years, really impacting your ability to build wealth over a lifetime. You see, a key point here is that your money doesn't just get taxed once. It gets hit multiple times. First, your income gets taxed right when you earn it. Then, if you invest that after-tax money and it grows, it gets taxed again through capital gains. And for some folks, it can even get taxed a third time when you try to pass it on to their kids. It's like a gauntlet for your dollars. Now, to really see what this looks like, the source gives us this fantastic comparison. A tale of two savers. Both are putting away 20 grand a year for 30 years and getting an 8% return. In some perfect theoretical world with no taxes, the whole $20,000 goes to work and compounds like magic. But back here in reality, taxes take a bite first, so you're only investing about $15,000. And then those returns get taxed too, knocking them down. And the result of that little tax drag? Man, it is absolutely staggering. Over this 30 years, our theoretical saver ends up with about $2.4 million. But our real-world saver? Just $1.3 million. That's a $1.1 million difference. That's wealth that just vanished, purely because of the compounding effect of taxes over time. So when you zoom out and look at the big picture, the analysis comes to this pretty shocking conclusion. When you add up all those layers, income, capital gains, estate taxes, the total tax burden over a person's life can literally wipe out 60 to 70% of the wealth they could have built. It's a massive claim about the power of these policies. All right, moving on to the second pillar of the GRIP framework. The source calls this one the regulatory maze. And this is all about the rules and, the red tape that can put a hard cap on how effectively we can save and invest our money. And here's a perfect example of what they're talking about. We all know about these awesome tax-advantaged accounts, right? Your 401k, your IRA, they're great. But the analysis points out that the government puts a strict limit on just how much you can put into them each year. So what's the big deal with these limits? Well, according to this analysis, they basically create a ceiling on your savings. If you're disciplined and you actually manage to save more than these caps, you're out of luck. You have to invest that extra money in a regular taxable account where it gets hit by that tax drag we were just talking about year after year. But it doesn't stop there. The framework points to another big regulatory wall, something it says creates a two-tier investment system. So on one side, you have the public markets, stocks, bonds, stuff anyone can buy. But then you have the private markets, things like venture capital, private equity. And access to that world is heavily restricted by SEC rules. So what does it take to get into this exclusive club? Well, you have to be what the SEC calls an accredited investor, which basically means you need a net worth over $1 million or make over $200,000 a year. The argument here is that this rule even if it's well-intentioned, ends up fencing off some of the most promising investments, locking the vast majority of people out of opportunities available to the wealthy. Okay, now for the third pillar. And this one's a real mind bender. The source calls it the dependency trap. It's about this incredibly counterintuitive situation where social programs can actually create a scenario where earning more money leaves you with less money. Yeah, you heard that right. The key idea here has a name. It's called the benefit cliff. Imagine this. You get a raise at work. Awesome, right? But that extra income pushes you just over the line and you lose eligibility for government benefits. The problem is, the value of the benefits you lose can be way more than the raise you got. You literally end up poorer for getting a promotion. Let's look at a really striking example from the analysis to see this in action. Take a single mom with 2 kids in Pennsylvania. She's earning $15,000 a year. But once you add in all her benefits, her family's total resources are almost $52,000. Now she works hard, gets a big raise, and is now making $35,000. You'd think she's way better off. But no, that raise pushes her over the cliff. Her benefits disappear, and her family's total resources drop to just under $40,000. Think about that. She's working more, earning more, and her family is over $12,000 worse off. So how do you even measure that? The analysis puts it in these stark terms. The effective marginal tax rate on that $20,000 raise was 160%, a 160% tax rate. It's just, wow. It's a mathematical trap that basically punishes you for trying to get ahead. Now, to support its critique of the wider, long-term impact of these programs, the analysis brings in the work of economist Thomas Sowell. This quote is used to frame its argument that certain welfare policies, whatever their intentions, had unintended and, in its view, damaging consequences for family structure and economic self-sufficiency. It's a very strong viewpoint, and it's central to the case the GRIP framework is making. So after laying out all these challenges, the tax drag, the regulatory maze, the benefit cliffs, the analysis shifts gears in this last section. It moves from pointing out the problems to asking, okay, so what do you do about it? It's all about strategies for actually working within this system. So the source lays out a handful of key strategies, the kind of playbook. First, max out everything you can in your 401k, IRA, and HSA. Squeeze every last drop of tax advantage out of them. It also talks about business ownership, which can unlock a whole new world of tax deductions. Then there's real estate with its own unique tax benefits. The source also suggests looking into alternative tools, like certain life insurance products. And finally, it even mentions something called geographic arbitrage, literally moving to a state with lower or no income tax to give yourself an instant pay raise. And really, what it all boils down to is this. The rules of the game might be complex, maybe even feel like they're stacked against you, but they are rules. And according to this analysis, the first step to winning any game is to learn how to play it. Understanding these restrictions is step 1 on the path to building freedom anyway. And that really brings us full circle, leaving us with this huge, fundamental question that sits at the heart of this whole debate. The GRI framework offers one critical perspective, but it all comes down to this. What is the right balance between having a social safety net and protecting individual economic freedom? There are no easy answers here, are there? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.